While much of the nation is focused on the Russia investigation and the FBI raiding the home and office and hotel room of Trump's personal lawyer, there's another guy we should probably be paying a little closer attention to. The guy Donald Trump declared over the weekend is, quote, doing a great job and has been receiving, quote, death threats because of his bold actions at the EPA, Scott Pruitt. Multiple Freedom of Information requests, by the way, have uncovered no record of death threats against Pruitt, by the way, but that's the explanation for his 24-hour-a-day security detail, first-class and charter plane travel for his frequent trips home, all taxpayer-funded, of course, and which one EPA official who spoke to the AP says has cost us around $3 million so far. But when it comes to his own money, Pruitt's a little more frugal, paying $50 a night to rent a condo from the wife of a Washington fossil fuel lobbyist for 6 months last year. And while some might say accepting such a deal is an ethical no-go, the White House argues otherwise.
The apartment was at market value and goes into other details, and that was what the president was reflecting.
$50 a night on Capitol Hill with the lobbyist, that was their market value according to the EPA?
Yes, according to the Office of Government Ethics.
Market value when? 1975? And as it turns out, the Office of Government Ethics is not as supportive as that sounds, releasing a letter yesterday calling on the EPA to look into all this, noting Pruitt, quote, did not seek ethics advice prior to entering into the lease, and that additional information has now come to light that calls into question whether the earlier determination that the administration paid market value would still be valid. That additional information may include the fact that Pruitt was apparently kind enough to let his daughter use the low-priced condo as well, but all of this pales in comparison to the actual job Pruitt has been doing at the EPA. Those bold actions Trump mentioned, including repealing the Clean Power Plan, the Obama-era policy aimed at cutting carbon dioxide, suspending the Clean Water Rules, an Obama-era policy that expanded federal water protections across much of the country. He's also delaying a 2016 law that had bipartisan congressional support and is intended to regulate toxic chemicals, and he wants to re-examine emission standards for cars and light trucks. I'm now joined by Scott Pruitt's predecessor, Gina McCarthy. She was the former EPA administrator under Barack Obama and a Boston native, is now director of the Center of Health and the Global Environment at Harvard's Chan School of Public Health and an advisor at Pegasus Capital Advisors. Gina, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too, Jim. Boy,
So
what an intro, huh?
Oh, we have no time for you, unfortunately, but it's nice to see you. So I want to put just a frame of reference for people who aren't used to how people in your positions act. So his security detail is 19. How big was yours?
7 or 8.
7 or 8 total. Okay. He flies first class.
No.
You didn't fly first class at all. You flew coach. And this rental space, were you renting an apartment for $50 a night at a nice...
No, I did sort of a normal year's lease.
And by the way, I should have added to that long introduction, the EPA under Pruitt approved a natural gas pipeline for the husband of the woman that rented him the apartment. He was a lobbyist for that firm. So is there any, is there any doubt that there are ethical issues vis-a-vis Scott Pruitt?
No, it's even worse than that. It's when his own team tried to explain to him that he was going beyond the pale on ethics and financing issues. He moved them. 5 of them
either demoted, transferred, or... So the only part of this that bothers me, and I don't know if I made that clear, is we focus so much, I think correctly, on the ethical standards or lack of same, that we don't focus on the things that have potentially huge impact. So if you support him, his successes, if you don't, his damage, how would you rate the first year of Scott Pruitt, Gina?
Can we do negatives?
Well, how bad is it? How bad is it?
It's not good at all.
How so?
Well, first of all, you know, as a past EPA administrator, I think I joined Republican and Democrat administrators of the past as well, and saying he's not even paying a bit of attention to the mission of the agency. And he's embarrassing.
But does he believe in the mission of the agency?
No,
I mean, he has said he doesn't believe humans are the primary cause of climate change. You wrote a piece. I mean, he's not a big believer in science.
No, he's all out attacking science. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't really appreciate the issue of climate change. He doesn't appreciate the issue of evolution. I've never known of an EPA administrator who really denied and attacked science. But it's even more fundamental than that. He doesn't even talk about public health. I mean, we're not a birds and bunnies agency, although I love birds and bunnies and dogs. But we like protect air quality, and we protect clean water and things like that. I mean, this is all about lives. And when he talks about his success, all he talks about is how much he has saved business, as if allowing more pollution wouldn't cause lives to be damaged and health to be damaged.
My guess is most people watching this probably buy your analysis of this. But let's hear from a Republican senator from South Dakota, Mike Rounds, who has a slightly different take on this. Here's the senator.
The reason why all of the emphasis right now is on Mr. Pruitt is because he is executing these policies, and they're not real popular policies with a lot of people. But he is executing the policies that this president said he would put in place.
I mean, isn't that a fair, even though you don't like them, and even though you might say objectively they're bad for our lives, our climate, he is implementing the policies of the man the American people said they wanted to lead them.
Well,
no?
I think that's why Trump is keeping him. I mean, I think the president agrees with what he's doing and saying, and he takes his lead from the top. He's behaving in a way that President Obama would never have tolerated.
Like what? Like what? You mean the ethical things we talked about?
And but the other issue is that he's really not paying attention to his job as much as he came in with a list of industry gimmies. That's all he's doing is going through that list. But the interesting thing and the sort of the dilemma for me is that as much as I think he shouldn't be in that position because of his ethics violations and other things, he's doing a terrible job.
What do you mean
I'm
by
afraid to tell the president that. I don't know if he watches your show.
He's a big fan. When he's not watching Fox and Friends, he tries to tune in. So what do you mean he's doing a terrible job?
You know, he isn't making all kinds of announcements, but he's not actually accomplished anything. Every single rule that was ready to be implemented in 2016 is still on the books today because he's not doing the job right.
And some of the things he has implemented, from what I understand, there are at least 6 instances, lead paint, pesticides, things like that, where courts have stopped him because of the sloppiness of his work.
He's just taking shortcuts. But if you don't follow the law and you don't believe in science and follow it, you may be able to get things done. They simply won't last. And that's where he is right now.
But what worries me about that, even if it's factually accurate, as you say, Gina, is that it almost allows people to have a false sense of security. I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, we had Bill McKibben on the radio with us the other day. He wrote End of Nature, 28 years ago, sort of started this whole thing, that said, you know, unlike a bad budget decision right now, which can be undone, the worst of Scott Pruitt, if it goes into place, can't be undone when the next president, or won't be, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's not that we shouldn't have federal leadership and move forward, particularly on the issue of climate. You know, I'm at Harvard because I want to make the connection very clear between health and climate. It is the biggest challenge that we face. And the problem we have with Pruitt is there's no momentum forward. It's only looking backwards. So even if none of those backwards movements actually last, we're still losing chunks of time when we should be participating with the rest of the world in attacking this issue. And what's really interesting is if you look at it, you know, he's making an announcement, for example, on cars. Let's not worry about those car standards anymore. The car manufacturers don't want them.
Which even some of the car companies don't want to change,
That's my point.
Right?
They really don't. He came in and he's just doing what whoever he listened to last. But the car manufacturers themselves don't. You know why? Because they have to make clean cars for China. That's GM's biggest market.
Too, right?
They'll have a split country in terms of the standards they need to meet. It makes no sense at all.
But I want to get back to your notion that he's not being effective at his attempt to dismantle what you and Barack Obama built. But at some point, if he's there long enough, he will get it right, if that's the goal. Is that not?
Well, he spent a year, and the only thing he's done is made a couple of announcements. He's made a couple of proposals. But, you know, to do a rule takes a really long time. I mean, there is a real level of analysis and work that needs to be done. And when I look at his proposals, for example, you mentioned about how we work to enhance federal protections of water. His reason to undo that rule was that President Trump told him to in an executive order. What kind of legal basis is that?
You know, Gina, last time you were here, you mentioned, like all good cabinet secretaries, you as a courtesy called your successor and offered to meet with him, and he had yet to return the call. I'm guessing
No.
Not yet?
Not yet. I can't say I'm holding my breath or waiting by the phone, but you know, when a guy builds a soundproof booth in his office and he locks his doors with biometric locks, he's not kind of the outgoing person who's looking for advice, I don't think.
If the phone doesn't ring, you'll know it's him. Is that correct, Gina? It's great to see you.
It's great to see you, Jim.
Thanks so much. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Gina McCarthy.